What makes the achievement of emotional sobriety so difficult is the habits we have, the patterns we have in our behavior, the habitual ways that we've come to think about things. We have to really become aware of those things in order to challenge them, because the consciousness that has created a lot of the problems in our life cannot solve it, cannot change things. So what happens is the first step is waking up.
We're coming to the end of the exploration of the therapeutic value of the 12 steps and how the 12 steps help us achieve emotional sobriety. As I've said now, is that Bill Wilson explicitly stated in step 12 when he was writing the 12 and 12 that if we practice, these principles in our daily affairs, and we and those about us begin to achieve and gain emotional sobriety in our life. Well, we've had over 50 sessions now on discussing this thing, and we've now arrived at the 12th step, and we've been unpacking that for a while now. Probably we're going to wrap this up next week at the latest, the week after that, and then we're going to be now talking about various topics related to emotional sobriety and exploring those with the same format that we've been doing. I'll present for about 10 or 15 minutes or invite somebody else, like one of my colleagues, to present on a topic, and then there'll be a discussion, and then we'll be opening it up for you guys to share your thoughts and ideas about it. But today I wanted to focus on one aspect of 12 step that I've mentioned several times, but I really want to point this out because it is such an important outcome of what we're doing. And I want to talk about it in terms of integration. So let me read to you from the American Psychological Association's dictionary. It's my source for psychological terms. I thought we'd go right to the APA. And this is what they say about integration. It's the coordination or unification of parts into a totality. The coordination or unification of parts into a totality. This general meaning has been incorporated into a wide variety of psychological contexts and topics. For example, the integration of personality denotes the gradual bringing together of constituent traits, behavioral patterns, motives, and so forth to form an organized whole that functions effectively with minimal effort or without conflict. Okay. Before in this meeting, I've defined mental health from the Gestalt therapy perspective as an appropriate balance and coordination of all that we are. An appropriate balance and coordination of all that we are. So in order to achieve that balance and coordination, we must be integrated. Another way of saying this is that we cannot attain emotional sobriety if we are constantly torn to pieces with conflict within ourselves. If we are at a civil war and fighting ourselves all the time, there's no way we're going to be able to experience any kind of emotional sobriety. And so what we've been doing as we've been journeying through the steps is the first thing we've been doing is raising our awareness of who we are. And as important, who we're not. But specifically tonight, we're going to be focusing on our awareness of the parts of us that are in conflict. Now, most of us came into this program because we were in a lot of pain. There was one part of us, if you were an alcoholic or an addict, that was doing something that was creating a lot of pain and suffering for both you and those people that you love and care about. And we were in a battle with that part of ourselves, and in a losing battle. That most people that try to control their addiction are unable to successfully control it. It just seems that every time we try to control our drinking or our using, things just got worse. And this was baffling. How come when I put my will on this, it didn't work? Because it started from the wrong position. When I try to be someone I'm not, someone that can control my drinking, I'm unable to control my drinking. It's paradoxical. What we saw in step 10 that started the process of change, and that we must never forget, is that we change when we own what's going on, not when we try to be someone we're not. You've heard Tom and Roger and myself talk about this in terms of self-acceptance. That when I go ahead and accept myself as I am, it seems to begin a process. And what I want to do is spend a little time talking about that process tonight and what happens, when we start to accept ourselves. Now, as you've heard Roger say and Tom say in this meeting, it's a caution. Self-acceptance does not mean excusing poor behavior. That's not what we're talking about. We are not excusing poor behavior when we accept ourselves. So it's also saying that we're not approving of every aspect of our personality either. There's parts of us that we're struggling with, and accepting that we're struggling with it does not mean we approve of those parts. When we accept it, we just accept that part of our personality exists. Now, this is what the observation was that Dr. Nathaniel Branden made when he was looking at this whole self-acceptance and how it relates to change. And I think it's very important, and I'll unpack this after I read it, because I think it takes a bit of really chewing it up to really get the meaning of this. He observed that the repression, meaning the denial of what's going on, so the repression obstructs the integrative function of the mind. So when I deny that I have this, then my mind is not able to wrap itself around what's going on and start to integrate what is into what's possible. I will say that again. When I'm denying what is, then my mind is unable to wrap itself around what is and integrate that into what is possible, what I can possibly become. It just cannot happen. I cannot get honest until I own that I'm a liar. I cannot understand, if I don't understand the function that's lying's been playing in my life and what's made it such a part of my response, then it's never going to get cleaned up. See, what we say is every different part of our personality has some kind of a function. It's some kind of an adaptation, and we need to understand what it is and what it's doing to us in order to let it go. That's what the essence of step 6 and 7 is about. We understand the functions of our character defaults and what they've meant to our lives and why they've become so important, so we can now start to let them go and develop other possibilities. But until we own them to that degree, we're not going to be able to do anything about them. So the repression obstructs the integrative functions of the mind, thereby keeping the organism in a perpetual state of conflict and tension. More precisely, the person keeps himself in the state of conflict and tension by blocking awareness of his inner experience and at the same time producing a sense of self-alienation. If he permits himself to experience and acknowledge his denied feelings, his denied behavior, he reestablishes contact with himself. He makes it possible for unwanted feelings and behavior to be discharged. And he unblocks, and this is the critical part, and he unblocks the integrative process by means of which his internal well-being is preserved. You see, I've talked all along about this organismic wisdom that we have inside, this movement towards becoming what we can be. We've called it the process of differentiation, towards moving towards wholeness. Well, you see, if I block myself from admitting something, then this natural movement that's towards wholeness cannot operate. If I say I'm a liar and I start to understand what it means, then all of these other parts can get to work on me moving towards my integrity. But when I don't own who I am and what's going on, I'm unable to unleash those constructive forces of the real self. They are blocked. They are obstructed. I cannot be what is possible. That's been our problem all along. That's what the false self did. It created us believing we had to be someone other than we are for us to be okay. That's why I have described recovery, from early on as the recovery of our true self, of recovering our true self. It means recovering who we can possibly be. But that begins by self-honesty. It begins by awareness. This is what makes this whole idea of being honest such an important and crucial thing. And as you can see, if we look back through the lens of achieving emotional sobriety, what's happened through the steps is that our ability to be honest with ourselves and own what's going on has taken radical shifts and transformation. We are much better able at owning who we are and taking responsibility for ourselves and seeing even the things we don't want to see and owning them than we could ever. Many times, one of the things I loved when Brian shares in these meetings, and he's nervous. He goes, my God, before I talk, I got to talk about nervous. And I didn't even want to talk about how nervous I was. But as soon as he owned that, he found some freedom from it. Well, before, I know Brian, in his life, he would never wanted to own that he was nervous because he would think that meant he was less than. Well, I've done that in millions of different ways to myself, just like you have. We've set up these false ideals, these false identifications, thinking we had to be a certain way to be okay. Well, that's it from this tired old alert guy that's filled with allergies tonight. So let me invite Roger and Tom in the room with me, and hopefully they can make some sense, because I have no idea what I just said.
And I have a lot of appreciation for you right now, generally, but also right now, Alan. That was a fight, man, and well freaking done. You said a lot of really good stuff, even though your health is not great right now. So thank you, man. Thank you. Tom, did you want to lead off tonight, or what do you think?
I can, or you can. It's I have no investment.
Okay. I prefer that you go ahead then.
Okay.
I'll follow up. Thank you.
I'll just, because I'm kind of going to I'm going to punctuate kind of what Alan said. Alan, I'm with Roger in terms of, I just appreciate the showing up and doing this, and willing to go to any lengths and for better and worse and all this other stuff. It's like, but I love that you bring it all back to acceptance. And I have acceptance is one of the things that I have the word acceptance and all that goes with it all has been one of the things that I've really gained an awful lot about during these last few weeks in particular, and specifically through what you've said, through what Roger has said, and through what you both have taught me about Nathaniel Branden. And I quote, and I don't know if I'm quoting Roger or quoting Nathaniel Branden, but one of the things I've been saying and giving credit to both of those you guys, and if it's you, Alan, be sure and tell me and I'll switch it. But it's like is I think I heard you say one time, Roger, just a simple sentence: acceptance is always the first step of change. It's like, and somehow it's one of those sentences that just basically I could have heard it a zillion times in my life. I heard it one time here, and it just ding, and it was there. It sunk in. It got it, and it's made and continues to make a world of difference. And so I have, because one day we'll have to, as most of us in this meeting, will have to go to Metaphors Anonymous one day. I'm just going to end with a bit of a metaphor. The acceptance in what I made a couple of notes here. Acceptance in the context of our recovery is acceptance of exactly what you said, Alan. What is? Just facts. It doesn't mean you like it, you don't like it, whatever it is. It's like, what I tell people a lot of times is, if you liked it, you probably wouldn't have to be working on accept it. So probably you're not real a fan of it. But it's simple. If I get up and walk across the room and I step around a chair that's in my way, I have practiced acceptance, period. I have accepted that chair is there. I have not thought about that, but I've just simply adjusted my movement according to what is. And then the other thing is the acceptance of responsibility for resolving our own problems. And in the metaphor that I just jotted down was, imagine that we're putting a puzzle together. Each of us has had our own puzzle, but we reject certain pieces. I don't want the green pieces. I don't want the odd shaped pieces. I don't, but then we could also just take it and say, well, I don't want the angry pieces. I don't want the shameful pieces. And so it's very simple. We don't have the whole puzzle to put together, and we will never put the puzzle together as long as we reject any of the pieces. Now, I don't know that we'll even be aware of all the pieces, but that I'll speak for myself. I doubt seriously that I will be aware of all the pieces before I drop off the face of this earth. But it's like my commitment is to keep being aware and keep accepting as they show up, and as I misplace them and find them again and put there. But I love this idea of that all of this, the study of 12 steps through the lens of emotional sobriety has brought us to this place where we are organizing, we are integrating, and we are setting it up so that we run smoothly, so that we are little bureaucracies that actually work. There's a part of me that's in charge. There's parts of me that do this and do that, but they're all different parts of that puzzle, and we need all the parts. Amen.
That's a nice metaphor, Tom.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Great metaphor, Tom. It really, it works. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. I mean, look, just because we get here doesn't mean we're fully integrated, but we're now committed to this process. And that's why I love the emphasis that you keep saying. Remember, practice, practice, practice. It's about practicing this stuff. And it's about, and I truly believe this. It's when you get to this point and you've really, really integrated this, you no longer are working the steps, they work you. Because the this organismic wisdom takes over, and we just now start to move towards that direction. We flow in that direction. When you said work smoothly, that's so true, Tom. That happens more than not always, but it definitely is something that we start to experience at this point. So thank you. Absolutely. Very well said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Roger, I'm so happy to see you.
Thank you, Tom.
I just want to say
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
That feels great. Thank you, man. So several thoughts come to me. One is part of what Alan and Tom are talking about, to me, really emphasizes the importance of why it's so critical that we keep our attention on our own process, on what we're doing, rather than focusing primarily on what other people are doing. Because that does not bring us into contact with these disowned or alienated or repressed, denied aspects of our behavior, of our thinking, of our communication with other people. So I just want to punch that for a second, that it's the awareness of our own functioning, how we tick, and trying to understand, like you were saying now, try to understand, hopefully with as much empathy and compassion as we can bring, how we came to function that way, what purpose that way of functioning served for us, rather than just doing our thing of self-hatred or judgmentalism and criticalness. So that's one kind of an aside that came up for me, is if I have a tendency to always focus on the other, either in a good way in terms of trying to be of service, but I can be leaving out development of self-support almost completely in that, or in a negative and a critical way, it still misses the point, because I can't bring the awareness I need to my own functioning that will allow me to start to put together. I don't believe, and I know you guys don't either, I don't believe we ever reach a point of perfect integration. It's a process. It's a lifelong process. Let me give an example of just in the last couple of weeks, the way I've noticed this showing up for me. I'm not sure why it's coming up so much recently, but I notice I'm playing if only a lot. If only this person had done this thing this way, then everything would be fine. If only that person had done this thing this other way, then everything would be fine. If only I were different in this way, then everything would be fine. And for some reason, I felt called to just realize that all of that process is just one of the many ways that I don't like to deal with reality, that I'd rather deal with my ideas about how things should be, all the expectations that we talk about, right? Rather than saying, oh my God, wait a second, that's exactly how this person needed to do that. That's fine. Now, what does that mean to me, right? What does that mean for me? And then when my nonsense is how I think of it, shows up about it, the judgmentalism or the criticalness or the shoulds, I'm just starting to see that more clearly as all. And I mean, it's almost incessant. And I've been trying to pay attention to this stuff a long time, and it's still almost incessant. But the difference is it doesn't have hardly any power most of the time for me now. If it's connected to something really, really important to me, one of my own needs or wants, then it's going to have more power. But for the most part, it feels good when I can just see that as part of my own process, not have a lot of judgment about it, and just come back to, okay, that's the reality. It's kind of nice just to see the simple reality of it and not lay a whole bunch of crap on top of that. It makes life so much simpler. So that's just one example. It still shows up, my nonsense, my judgmentalism, my over-praising tendency. That's another one, whatever it is, right? It still shows up, but it doesn't have nearly as much power. And in that way, I'm much more accepting of it. And it just feels like another part of me that doesn't cause me or others nearly as much trouble as it used to. So that's one example that I can give of just trying to be aware of and take ownership of patterns I learned growing up, how to try to be accepting of those patterns rather than hateful toward them, and not give them energy, just not give them energy. So,
Wow.
Yeah, that's enough.
I
I'd love to hear
love
what
that.
other people have to
That's
say.
a lot. That's a lot. Yeah.
I love that. If only, Roger. If only.
Oh yeah, God,
If only.
If only
I had
this were
hair on
different.
my head. If only if I had Tom's head of hair. If I had that, And I could, Now, my big if only now in the third grade, if only Susie Valinsky would have kissed me at recess. I still hold on.
That probably would have changed. Yeah, that's a given.
The whole trajectory of my life.
To me, it takes a lifetime for me. For just trying to wear out our if onlys, right? Because
it's really true.
Absolutely. And they prevent integration, they prevent progress. And again, conflict is not a bad thing, everyone. Right. Conflict is a deep and abiding part of the human experience. So just because we experience conflict doesn't mean we're doing anything wrong. Of course we experience conflict about all kinds of things. But
yeah, that's right, Raj. We do. But I was going to say, one of my big if onlys, if only my dad wouldn't have died when he was 39 and I was 11.
That's huge.
That was a huge if only for me.
Absolutely.
God, if he would.
But when we're doing if onlys, we're also doing my favorite thing, which is time traveling and imagining that we could change things if we time travel. And of course, if any of us have read, I've read a lot of, I love time travel stories, and I read a lot of those, and I've seen a lot of those movies. And of course, there's one theme in that is you try to mess with time, you're going to fuck everything up. It's like, and I think about that, but I recently was talking to somebody about regrets. We were talking about 8th and 9th step work, and I said something about the regrets I had in my first marriage, of how I treated my wife and my stepkids, and they asked me point blank, so you regret that, you're sorry about that, and you've made amends, and would you change it if you could? And this is a very important one for me as far as acceptance, because immediately I don't even know that I could explain it to myself entirely, but no, I would not. It's right. Like, because every bit of that, including the death of your father, all these other things we can think about, is what brings me right here. And I am grateful that I don't have a damn problem in the world with where I am right this very moment, sitting here with you guys. And I certainly think, I certainly wouldn't be in this 35-year marriage with Dee Dee if I went back and changed the nature of stuff. And the thing about it is, it's, I don't have to have a belief system that says, God works in mysterious ways, or everything happens for a reason. It's just the way it happened. And my job is to be focused in the present tense. And I love what you said just then, Roger, about the if onlys just block you from integration. Well,
and I want to add one more thought. When I'm in that mode where I'm being critical or judgmental and all that stuff, it does prevent me from moving forward, but it also prevents connection. Because if I can move toward a perspective, that says, well, wait, this is the reality. This is how this person does this or says this or lives this. And I can try to understand that rather than judge that. I can't tell you how that changes my experience in that moment. And it creates an experience within me and sometimes between me and the other person that I absolutely love. And means so much to me. And so I wanted to share that too.
I love that, Raj. But you know what you just said also, I connected something, which I think is important. See, it's the acceptance of what is that now undoes the self-alienation. You see, when I'm in conflict with reality and I'm alienated, I cannot use who I am to deal with it because I've cut myself off.
Yeah.
As soon as that acceptance happens, now, and it sounds so weird to say it that way, I become available to myself. I'm now able to use, what I talked about, this organismic wisdom that moves me towards grappling with a problem and dealing with it until I come up with some kind of an answer. I mean, there's that part of me that when I'm not getting in the way and alienated from myself, I love that process of struggling to come with some completion to it. You know that you and I have talked about that before in terms of how exciting it is to see our self-actualization unfolding and the engagement of it. So I just love this discussion tonight.
I hear a lot of people criticize the 12 steps that they're old-fashioned. I can understand that criticism. They were written back in 1935. Some people that are agnostic have difficulty with the word God used in the steps. For me, I look at the process that's involved. The forces that the 12 steps generate are so powerful that I think they're ageless. There's this interesting phenomena that happens when you work the steps. They create a charge and then a discharge. You know, the first step, we're powerless. Our life has become unmanageable. It creates this charge. You know, we're in big trouble and we don't know what to do. And then step 2 comes along and it says we have hope. That charge, that existential crisis that we have is resolved. What's happening here is parallel to life. We charge ourselves when we breathe in. When we exhale, we discharge. That's the rhythm of life. And the way I love to think about the 12 steps, it's helping us get connected to the rhythm of life so we can learn how to show up in a good way.